Now we're going to talk about the best way to hook and rig live shrimp. Many mistakes I see people making. First, I'm going to talk about what not to do. I see it all the time. Makes my skin just cringe. You'll see people fishing a lot from shore, even boats, and they'll be in an area where there's oftentimes current or it's deeper, and they use a weight and they hook a shrimp right in the back like that. A live shrimp sits down on the bottom like that. Nothing wants to eat that. It doesn't look like anything good. If you mash it up, we got some bottom dwellers like some black drum or maybe some whiting or redfish will eat that. But if he's not crushed up and he's a whole live shrimp and he looks like that, nothing will eat him. If there's current, he just sits there and spins attached to the weight. If there's no weight, he's hooked like that, he's just spinning on the surface. Don't hook a shrimp in the back like that. It is the worst. So I'm going to teach you the proper ways to hook these shrimp. Fishing a live shrimp, you want to match the type of fish you're going to catch. So if you're in the wintertime, I like a medium-sized shrimp. I want to be really lively. That's a good medium-sized shrimp. You get the big jumbos, it's awesome for snook and trout in the summertime when the fish are a little bit more aggressive and they want a bigger meal. But in the wintertime and the springtime, that's a good little shrimp. Match the hook. Number one hook, size 1. I like to hook them one of 3 ways. The first is if you are doing a lot of casting with him, let's say you're sight fishing with him or there's a lot of current or you're drifting him, there's movement, there's line tension, he's going to be drug in, cast a lot. You go straight up and down, right behind his eyes, and you want to center his body right through the top of the horn with the number 1 hook, just like that. He's not hurt, he's going to swim really well. He's going to be able to carry that hook. He's going to swim straight ahead. He's not going to spin. He's going to look like he should look. And he'll actually be able to swim really well like that. If you cast him out, throw him out, he's going to swim. Another way to hook them is right before his brain. You see that little black spot? To be honest with you, I'm not sure if that's actually his brain, but you don't want to hook that black spot. That'll kill him instantly. Go right between his eyes and that black spot, or in the tip of his shell, sideways, right under his horn. With that, you can cast really hard, but you don't want to cast too many times. When you retrieve him, he'll plane out sideways and he'll spin in the water when you reel him in. That'll kill him really fast. However, when you do hook him like that, he is going to swim really well on his own. So bigger hand-picked shrimp, especially if I'm snook fishing, this is how I hook them with a smaller hook. The line, when it pulls back, the hook will pivot around and lay like that. And he'll actually carry it. I've been able to open the bail and free line these shrimp, and he'll swim around on the surface. He'll go all over the place. This is probably the best way to do it as long as you're not casting often. I don't know what happens if you cast 3 or 4 times like that. Water, I think, gets in there and inside of his shell, and they die pretty fast. And also if there's a lot of current and you're reeling, he's going to spin and not look natural. That's why you want to hook it up underneath the front. Lastly, and if you want to hook them the very end of the tail like this, that shrimp's able to swim pretty well. You can cast them pretty often like this. The only problem is there's a lot of weight on his tail, and since his little propulsion systems underneath there, his little swimmerettes, when you pull on his tail with weight, he kind of dies kind of faster. He'll give up. He'll just go sit on the bottom. But if you're flipping shrimp in areas, or if the current's really strong, he's pretty streamlined and aerodynamic hook like that. It's a pretty good way. So if you're fishing on a bridge, or you're fishing off the shore, you're fishing in current, and you've got a weight on these shrimp, that's a pretty good way to hook them. And also, pinch off his tail. It's a dead shrimp, but he's pretty fresh. Pinch off just the tip of his tail or cut it off, and then hook it. That way, he's extremely aerodynamic in the water. The current just goes right by and he'll sit just like that. So you got to wait. So he looks natural. So when the big fish swims up on the bottom and looks at him, he looks like a shrimp, and there's scent coming off of his tail there. Those fish can pick up on it. So I'll show you another way to rig them like this when their tail's pinched off. This is my favorite way to rig them if I'm fishing for redfish, if I'm sight fishing redfish, or if I'm If I'm fishing for bonefish, if you're in grass and you're casting a lot and you're doing more sight fishing, this is how I fish for big bonefish. So I've got a little 2/0 hook, 20-pound test leader, and I've got one of those sliding weights like you'd use, you know, on a soft plastic. Just judge the weight accordingly. What you do is you pinch the tail off the shrimp, you come in a little ways, and you come out. Then what you're going to do is you pull your knot in the eye through, you hook that shrimp. Don't go into his head, because it'll actually, how a shrimp's body works, it'll curl him up into a ball. Hook him back into the tail section and then pull on it. So now he's rigged like that. And that is completely weedless. There's a lot of scent. So for instance, you're fishing some redfish that are uptailing a school redfish, or you've got some bonefish that are working up in there. You can work this like a lure. That weight will come back, make him completely weedless. You can jig it, you can wiggle it, but when the fish tracks it, like a lot of bigger fish do, they'll track it, but they don't want to eat it. They're just swimming behind it, and you're bouncing it along, and they're not eating it. You just stop it, and you let the scent and the shrimp do its job, and they'll pick that right up. So you get their attention, wiggle a little bit, let it sit. Perfect. You can cast it over and over and over again. You can drag it. You can pull it right through grass. That is a really good way to rig a shrimp to catch big trophy fish. Another really good technique that's extremely popular, everybody fishes this way on a regular basis, but it's using a popping cork, a clacking cork, whatever you prefer. I like popping cork, no rattles in it. The only time it makes noise is when it goes kaploosh, doesn't spook off the big fish. When you use a rattling cork, it'll attract lots of redfish and smaller trout and stuff, more aggressive fish jacks. But a big snook, a big trout, he doesn't want to hear a bunch of metal on metal. He wants to hear a pop every now and again. When you rig these popping corks, you want to make the line that goes down the same length as the bottom is deep. So if it's 4 feet, 4 feet of line down. You want this shrimp close to the bottom to get the bigger fish. Then you also get the smaller fish. And how I like to rig the shrimp with a cork is right between the eyes and that black spot. Just hook him on there like so. That way he's gonna sit down there, super fresh. He's gonna swim around. Every now and again, pop it, track the big fish, that noise, they'll come see your shrimp. What you want to avoid is, again, I see it so often, people will be sitting there talking, their line's tight, so their line's going back to the rod, and they see their cork out there and wondering why they're not getting any bites. It's because their cork's out there dragging in the current, and so is their shrimp, and their shrimp's just sitting there twirling on the surface. Live baits are meant to be fished almost like lures. The better you fish them and the more you fish them, the bigger and better and more fish you're going to catch. It's really hard to just throw a bait out, stick it in the rod holder, catch fish. You can. Shrimp's a good bait to do that. That's why people like it. But if you focus, you'll catch more. I'm going to show you right here in the water real quick what this looks like when you hook them like that. See, he's hooked right there, and he looks really natural, like a shrimp. If you hooked him in the tail, he's going to get drugged backwards. If you hooked him in the middle of the body, he would twirl. And if there's current and he's slowly swimming, he just looks really natural, just like he would if there was no rig on him. This is the last thing I'm going to talk to you about when it comes to rigging shrimp. I like targeting big fish. I like targeting numbers of bigger fish. But when I'm taking out a family, or I just want to catch a lot of fish, or the weather's bad and I got to go back up in the canals, and you're fishing for black drum, small redfish, smaller trout, sheepshead, just a lot of different fish, and having a fun day doing it, this is my rig. You get a little 1/0 hook, piece of 20-pound fluorocarbon leader, and a little 3/8 ounce or a 1/4 ounce split shot, depending on how deep you are. Don't put a big weight on, don't put a tiny split shot, but just a smaller little split shot. Put it about that far from the hook. You're able to cast it. It keeps the bait close to the bottom when it sinks, but there's also a little bit of leniency when it falls. So you don't want to put your split shot right on the hook. Pinch the tip of the tail off your shrimp. That way black drum and sheepshead can smell it and they'll find it. But it also looks really good to the bigger fish like the snook and the trout. Hook it right in the tip of the tail. This time you're going to go bottom to top, just like that. In the water, sinking, it looks like a real shrimp. If you bounce it on the bottom, it looks like a live, happy shrimp. You're gonna fool the big fish, but you're also gonna catch all the other little fish that just like pieces of shrimp. So I'll go through sometimes 15 dozen shrimp this way when I'm fishing some structure back in the deeper water canals in the wintertime or the spring, or I just want to take the family out to catch some fish. Or if you're fishing anywhere, if you're fishing off of a bridge or you're fishing off of a dock and you're just out there trying to have fun, you want to catch some fish and all you got is a pail of shrimp, that is the rig that you want to use right there.